What if you're not actually behind? So many of us spend our days trying to catch up, managing our time better, and finally getting everything done so that we can rest. But what if that's the wrong goal altogether? In today's conversation, we're unpacking the lies we believe about productivity, the hidden beliefs driving our busyness, and how to stop measuring our lives by our to do lists so that we can experience greater peace in the present moment with the Lord. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker Kylie Hine. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Persistence in Prayer. Today, I am joined by the return of Monica Elias. If you did not meet Monica, she was here back on episode 43. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly, highly recommend it. We talked about the F word, the failure word, and all of the questions that we can ask ourselves to retrain our brains to learn to love failure. Monica is a Catholic time coach for leaders who want to bring their God-given vision to life faster and with more ease without burnout. Monica, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is my first return, first time I've been invited back on a podcast for the second time. So that feels fun, except for my very first podcast. I think I did such a bad job. She felt sorry for me. And was like, we need to record again. One of my clients who I still work with, so it's been 4 years, she's still working with me. She heard that the second interview that was slightly better. Anyway, so this is, it feels like a nice milestone.
And I also think it just goes to show the testament to the work that you're doing on yourself as well as with all of your clients, because so many people would hear that and be like, oh, that was a total failure. But you're like, I'm still going on podcasts. This hasn't changed anything. And I actually had so much good feedback from your episode when it aired. And that was when I feel like I was still in the baby stages of podcasting. I think I had heard plan on hating your first 50 episodes, and then by then you'll finally start to get the hang of it. So you were still in the first 50.
That's great. Nice.
We're both
And
learning.
failure is one of the 4 key steps that I now have in my process. So I love that we had that conversation back then. And
Yeah. And it's kind of come full circle, and you've developed so many incredible things since then. And I see them popping up all the time in the different groups that I'm in. So I'm just really excited to have you here. And I wanted to kind of open with this question that comes up a lot, or I should say, it's a perceived problem that comes up a lot with all of us as humans, but also with women, especially, I think. And it's this feeling that we are constantly running behind. Like, no matter what, we cannot get caught up on things. So I'll give an example. I could not sleep the other night. I had terrible insomnia. I think I fell asleep about 3:30 in the morning. And then the next day it was like, okay, I set my alarm for a certain time, but I needed the extra hour of sleep. So then I started out my day, quote unquote, behind. And then I didn't get done all the things that I had planned to do. So then I go into my next day further behind. And then it just builds. So as women, in our minds, we start to label this and we start to feel like we are constantly behind. Why do you think so many women feel like they are behind?
so I think there are a few things going on. Number one, I think we have to give ourselves credit for the fact that the way I like to think of it is we are pioneering holiness in an entirely new age. And we've seen this with, if you've read the Pope's new encyclical,
Mm-hmm.
he kind of is touching on this, and that's why he wrote it. Like, he can see we're just stepping into this new era with technology and AI. And here's the way I think about it. there are no canonized saints from the modern era. There is nobody that we can look to who is a shining example of this is what it looks like to live out life well, to be a saint, to be the most fully human in the digital age. Like even St. Carlo Acutis, who we all love, we had his relics touring around quite a bit in the last couple of years. And even St. Carlo Acutis, who is like, oh, he used the internet and played video games, like he's like a tech saint. He died the year before the iPhone was invented. So even he has lived, like that was a very different era still.
Mhm.
Like it's moving fast. So I think just knowing that means we can give ourselves some grace and just kind of go, oh, like we've just never lived in a time with the sheer amount of information to process, the way that life is set up, like the amount, different hats that we need to wear, the sheer amount of things that we need to do. And that brings me to the next point I wanted to make, which is we also tell ourselves, if I just finish the to do list, then I'll feel okay. Then I'll be able to rest. But most of the things that we need to do, they like turn into something else. So the laundry, you have to put the washing on, and then it turns into like it's not just over. Then you have to like, at least in Australia, we hang it out on the line. I don't think you guys really do that. You hang it out on the line, then you got to bring it in and then sort it and then put it away. Like there's, or like you try and catch up with a friend, you got to message the friend, then you're like back and forth trying to set up a time and get it in your calendar. Like there's just, for some reason, our brains just really want to hold on to this idea that we could somehow ever finish all of the
Mm.
things, as opposed to it's just life. You're just living. You're just doing things. Like there's always things to be done, and you can kind of tackle that in two ways. I think that you can put less on there, which is for sure one thing that I help people do, like eliminate some of the things that are on the list. But you also just have to be okay with there's always going to be things to do. Just at any given moment, like my business coach says, the art of being a CEO is having endless amounts of improvement projects
Mhm.
that you can see that need to happen and being okay with that. Like you just are never going to get to the end. And I think that's just the same for all of us. And then finally, just even having the idea of being behind. I think if we feel behind, it leads us to like feel defeated. And so we put less energy into getting things done, which our brain loves. Our brain's like, let's conserve all the energy, not get outside our comfort zone, any excuse
Mm.
to stay comfortable. Our brains love that. And so they invent this idea of this imaginary yardstick. Like that's the only way that you can be behind. If there's some kind of yardstick where this is where I should be, and then I'm going to compare where I am with where I think I should be. And so as soon as you say that you're behind, you're inherently saying, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Versus in every single moment, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is exactly what is supposed to be happening right now. And having
Mhm.
acceptance for the moment that you're in, just having any idea of it even being possible to be behind creates all of this unnecessary angst that slows us down.
I love that you brought up the encyclical. I just had a discussion with Anna
I
Munley
read
about
it
the
and then
encyclical. It just came out, so you
I
probably haven't had a chance to listen to it. It just came out yesterday as of our time of recording, and we were just talking about how this is something that we are truly still navigating, so I love that you compared this to Carlo, and it's like, we haven't explored this yet, and we can give our brains the freedom to just say, "We're still figuring out what it's like to live in this time right now." And we get to be the
uh
leaders. We get to be the potential
yeah.
saints of our time. And it's kind of like motherhood, I think, where you're given the baby and you go home and there's no manual to follow. Like you don't know what is going to be needed for your unique human. And you just kind of figure it
uh
out as you go. We're going to figure it out as we go. And you talked about learning to be okay with things on our to do list. Sometimes just sitting with the Lord and giving that to-do list to him or asking him to highlight, like, Lord, what is the thing on this list that needs to happen today? Or is there even anything on it that you want me to do? Because I know I make a lot of lists and the Lord's like, that has nothing to do with what I want you to do today. I just want you to go play with your kids. And I used to resist that so much. It was like, no, but there's expectations because as a teacher, it was like my grades have to be in. I used to give up my entire Sundays. I would take,
Mm.
I'm embarrassed to say this. This was even before kids. I remember grading papers at my niece's birthday party because I had to get them done and I didn't know how I was gonna
Mm.
get it done. I remember writing an essay for my master's program at a bar and grill while I was with my friends because I did
Mm.
not know how to surrender my to-do list. I did not know how to, like, sit and rest with the Lord and let the Holy Spirit lead, and it's crazy, and I still have moments like that, not to that extreme, but our
Mm.
brains just fight against the culture, against the expectations that we place in our own minds or that other people put on us. And I love that you mentioned our inability to sometimes just ignore that marker of like, this is where I should be. Because when we fall into that mental trap, it goes against God's plan for us to be here in the present. If He did not want us exactly where we are, we would not be here.
Yeah, that's essentially what you're saying. Like, Lord, you've got it wrong. Your plan is wrong. This isn't what's supposed to be happening. My plan was right. Yours is wrong.
Yes.
Mm.
And then we fall into that sinful nature. I think that awareness is so huge and has been so helpful for me. We can do that same thing with personality traits, things that we don't like about ourselves, like, oh, Lord, why did you make me this way? It's like, well, I wanted you that way, or I wouldn't have made you that way. It goes against His design for us. And as we start to recognize this, oh, I should be here. I plan on being here and now I'm not. Now I'm behind and now I'm beating myself up. A common statement that comes up that I hear all of the time is I just need to manage my time better. I bought the planner and I wrote out all the things. I just need to follow it. But that doesn't always actually happen. There's something else that's kind of going on underneath there. What does it sometimes mean when someone says, I just need to manage my time better? Is there something underlying that?
Mm. I think that it's kind of laced with some shame, blaming yourself, like there's something wrong with me, I'm doing it wrong. And anytime we go into shame, I just recorded a video for my one-on-one clients about this, giving them all the ways to look out for. This is how shame's going to show up for you and what it's going to do. But anytime we go into shame, we hide, we avoid looking at ourselves, we avoid looking at the thing that we're struggling with. So if we're feeling shame and we don't want to really look at try and uncover the root cause, it focuses our problem solving in the wrong place. So
Mm,
managing the time is really a distraction. Like if you fixate on the time and managing that, you're going to try to solve it with specific time management strategies. And maybe I just need a different planner, a different system. And so the saying, I just need to manage my time better, it's like you're kind of onto yourself. Like there's an element of truth there, but you're not taking it all the way through. I would say there are skills that are lacking, but it's probably not the ones that maybe people think. The biggest determining factor for what happens in your time is you. So there's the moment where it doesn't matter what you write on the calendar, you get to the moment where it's the next thing to do that you've been dreading doing. You have to decide to do it in that moment. That's not a time management problem. That's a you management problem.
mhm,
That's who you're being. That's your process of decision making, how you make your decisions, whether you prioritize how you feel now or where you want to be in the future, what you make it mean when discomfort arrives or fear arrives, what you make failure mean. All of that is really where we want to be focusing our problem solving and our ability also to create desire to do the thing. Like, why do I want to do this thing that past me said, this is what I want to do? Being able to connect with that in that moment. Why do I want to do this? Like, all of that is the ability to It's self-leadership. It's the ability to direct your brain, direct your interior life and get it all working together so that it's not part of you is like pulling one way and part of you is pulling the other way and you're having this
Mm.
internal battle. If you can get all the parts of your interior life all moving in the same direction, working together the way that God made them to, you just move so much faster. Not in a way where it's like I'm like a robot and I do everything perfectly, but if you remove time as the problem and as the place to problem solve, then your problem solving becomes much more fruitful. You can look at, well, what's actually going on interiorly that's creating all of the things that I'm doing that I don't want to be doing.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard we can't manage time, we can only manage ourselves. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense is what I'm hearing from you too, is a lot of times our lack of ability to get things
Mm,
done isn't because of our time management or the way that we write out our schedule or having the wrong planner. It's that we are avoiding things that are uncomfortable, that we don't want to do, that we don't want to fail at. And so we are time buffering with other things. I know I'm totally guilty of this. And so the root of the problem isn't the management of my time. It's for me personally, usually a discernment problem. I'm trying to do something that God's not actually asking me to do. It's a temperance problem because I get sucked into doing things that feel good in the moment, right? That are entertaining, which again goes back to the avoidance. And a way to kind of begin to
mm,
overcome
mm.
this is through our mindsets. I don't know what questions you use. I was just trying to brainstorm some questions that I know I use for myself or with clients as we're looking at kind of baby tasks. And we kind of reiterate and go over like, why is this important for you to accomplish? Why is it important or helpful for your family? How are you going to feel when you finish this task? Like, what weight is going to be lifted? And focusing on those things versus the task itself. Are
Mm.
there any questions that you kind of utilize?
I mean, there's a few. You could also go to your self concept, like who's the version of me that
Mm,
has very little drama about this task, that this is just who I am and what I do. The way I think about desire is I have this concept of we have urges for comfort and desires for greatness. So this is from Pope Benedict's quote, the world offers you comfort. You were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. So we have
mhm,
urges feel it's the urge to scroll, the urge to check your phone, to do just one more thing before I do the uncomfortable thing, the urge to stay in bed and snooze instead of getting up. Like it feels really important that I reach for this thing right now. And they tend to be not in keeping with our actual desires. Like, who do I want to be when I'm 80 years old?
mhm,
What will my tomorrow self thank me for? What will I be proud of? What are the things that really matter to me? Those are what I call desires for greatness. And whichever one is bigger in your mind is the one you will choose. So if you're lying in bed and your brain is full of how comfortable bed is, and you're just focusing on that and you're making it big in your mind, that's what's going to be more compelling. You're going to choose to stay in bed. And so the art of getting out of bed is to create more desire, to ask yourself things like, why does it matter? Why is it important to me? Why do I want to do this? What's going to be amazing about getting out of bed? How is it actually going to be easier to just get out of bed than to keep snoozing? Because our brain wants to tell us it's going to be harder, but how is it actually going to be easier, better? Just exploring all of the ways, like, why is this compelling? What's going to be the impact of this long term? And what's it going to cost me to choose the thing that feels comfortable in the moment? I think are a couple of ways to do it. But it's also like in the moment, what are you focusing on? Because you could just have like one baby thought and that may not be enough if you're just like mostly focusing over here on what's comfortable. You have to like, it's directing your brain. Where am I going to focus? What am I paying attention to in that moment?
The cost question is the one that just hit me. I was like, "Oh, yes." Thinking about what is this costing me to keep doing this or not doing this, whatever it
Mhm.
happens to be, and when you look at that, you're like, "Oh, it's so helpful." One of the reasons why a lot of us want to manage our time better is because we want to be more productive, right? That's a thing of this world that we feel like we need to be productive all of the time. And you had a really great definition of productivity that I read the other day. Can you share with us how you define productive?
Uh-huh. So I love this question. So, firstly, I think being productive is really being fruitful. It's not in the same way that the world maybe defines productivity, but I don't think that means we need to throw the term out. Like, I think it is good to want to produce, to create. That's what we're called to do with the Lord, to co create. And so it is a good desire. And then it's just more the world kind of focuses that in an economic sense. But there are many things that are valuable to produce and to create. But the way I like to think about it is so the Latin root is ducere, which means literally to lead forth from the ground. So originally, what you produce, it was like, what's the yield of this harvest? Like, what are we producing on the farm? But I love that it has the verb to lead in there. So to me, productivity is less about exactly what you're doing and more who is leading you while you're doing it. Am I leading myself and doing just what I want to do and leaving God out of the picture? Or is the Lord leading me into authentic self leadership moment by moment? And so it's actually a really interesting thought exercise to, I'm going to mention Carlo Acutis again. So he said something along the lines of every minute that we are not becoming more holy is a minute spent in vain. And I think it's an interesting exercise to think about, like, if I could be productive all of the time, if I could be fruitful all of the time, if I was being led by the Lord all of the time, like, what would I be thinking? Who is that version of me? And of course, it's impossible to be to do that 100% of the time, but I think it's an interesting exercise to consider. And whenever I do it and I think about who is that version of me, like, I love the way that I show up. I come up with really powerful thoughts that are different than, because I think we can sometimes fall into, well, I can't be perfect and I can't do it all of the time. So I let myself off the hook. Like, it's impossible. So I just won't even go there. But I think it's interesting to go there and go, well, if that was the case, how would I show up? And to me, this also encapsulates, like, we've all had the experience of having a quote unquote productive day where you have maybe gotten a lot of things done, but you weren't very connected to the Lord and you didn't really show up very well to other people. You weren't like listening out for his voice and were kind of distracted. Like, is that truly productive? And then you can also have a restful day, especially on a Sunday. And that's like, if that's what the Lord is calling you to, that's the most productive, the most fruitful thing that you could be doing. So sometimes people, they talk about like we're human beings, not human doings. And I'm not anti-doing, like doing is important, but the who you're being while you're doing it is the most fundamental part.
I like this idea of looking at it as a way to lead. And I love that you have used the word fruit in relation
Oh.
to productivity. Because what if we began to look at our days not from how productive we were or to pray to be more productive, but to pray to be more fruitful? Because if we look at the fruits of the Holy Spirit, and if this was the way that we measured our day, it's like, are we measuring our day by how much love we put into those around us? Joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, modesty. Like, are we measuring by those things, or are we measuring by how many things we checked off of our to-do list? And it's not to say that the to-do list doesn't matter, right? There are certain things you have to do. You have to eventually cook for your kids or they will starve, right? Or at least buy them food. There are certain things that we have to do. We have to do laundry, but how are we doing those things? And that is more important than how many of them we get done. And I know for
Mm.
myself, there's so many lies that we believe about productivity, that I've believed about productivity, associating my productivity with my worth. Are there any other kind of lies that have come up for you in your own life or maybe with the women that you work with around the way that they perceive productivity or even busyness?
Yeah, some of the common ones are, I mean, my worth is in my productivity, how much I get done. And just on that, like sometimes, yeah, we fixate on the number, like the amount of things versus what's the most impactful. What are the things
Mhm.
that are actually going to move the needle on where I want to go, who I want to become, what I feel God is calling me to co create with Him? That should really be the measure. Rest is lazy, or I need to earn rest. And some version of like, I can't rest until it's all done and I need to constantly be getting things done. Like, I've coached a number of clients that are just, I feel so uncomfortable just stopping and sitting still. And this is why it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's fundamentally an interior thing because with this one client in particular, I'm thinking of like it applied to her prayer as well. Anytime she stopped, she was like, I have all these big uncomfortable emotions that I don't want to feel, and they're going to like come up and I'm going to have to feel them if I stop. So it was like her brain's way of protecting her from having to feel uncomfortable. It was more comfortable to just be working herself into the ground and running around doing stuff all of the time and not giving herself space to pause. Yeah. Mm.
The productivity in prayer. I've used this example before talking about how for some of us, it's like we just want to journal during our prayer time because there's output. And it's like, not that journaling is bad, by all means, I journal, but wanting to just prayer journal the whole time because at the end, it's like there's something to show for it. And I will catch
Oh,
myself sometimes,
interesting.
even now, having this thought, and I don't always journal a lot. Sometimes it's like a single sentence, or I do my exam and I do like an up arrow, down arrow for each day. But I'll notice myself when I had times of prayer, and I didn't even think to take out my journal. It was just a really peaceful time of prayer. Time was up, or maybe my kid came in and my last 5 to 10 minutes of prayer didn't look like what it normally did. And I will have this thought like, oh, well, I didn't write it down. Like, it's like this subconscious thought that someone's going to go through my prayer journal and be like, oh, you didn't pray that day. You didn't write anything down. Right? It's so
Mm,
crazy. No one is going to look at my prayer journal. No one's going to be like, well, she didn't write anything that day. She must not have prayed. It's so crazy the places that our brain will take us when it comes to our beliefs about productivity. And then it also goes back to this transactional relationship with God or even with the humans around us of like, I have to give something in order to receive something, which
mm.
goes against the Lord's love. Like, He gives to us, He doesn't need anything in return. That doesn't mean He doesn't desire things from us and He doesn't want our love, but He didn't create us because He needed us. He created us in love.
Yeah,
S-
that's very true. That's really interesting.
One of the things that I know I struggle with, and I've talked about this before, so there's that productiveness, busyness
Mm.
tension. There's the rest and laziness tension. But then there's also the I recognize that I need rest. And I know that I don't have to earn it. Like, I've worked through that, but I literally just don't know how to find time for rest. I feel like my circumstances are not allowing me a place to fit this in. Do you have any strategies or things to help for that when it feels like there literally is just no time in the day to take a break
Uh-huh.
or to sleep as a
So I
mom? Like,
think
time to
yeah.
sleep.
So I think there's a couple of things. Number one, I would for sure be challenging that big time because like if it was really true that there was literally no time and that was how it was meant to be, then that would be like on the one hand, you're like, I feel like I'm being called to rest. And then on the other hand, but there's no time. It's like, then you're kind of saying, God's asking me to rest, but he's making it impossible. So he's asking me to do an impossible thing, which is not how he operates. So there has to be something that we're missing in that scenario because as long as it feels impossible, like you're not going to problem solve it. You're not going to get creative. And so if I believed it was possible to create time for rest, not to find it, but to create it,
Mm,
then what ideas come to mind. If I'm willing to get creative, if I'm willing to be really uncomfortable in asking for help and being super vulnerable, if I'm willing to advocate for myself, how would I do that? What ideas come to mind? And as a busy mum, it could be things like, well, I'm willing to teach my kids how to play independently, do quiet time so that I get little breaks throughout the day here and there. I'm willing to open up to a friend and ask, can we do some babysitting swaps? But you just won't, as long as it feels completely impossible, that's going to shut down your problem solving. So that's one piece. And thinking that you don't have time for rest, it's kind of another version of I can't afford to rest. But my thought is always, I can't afford not to rest. I have experienced what
Mhm.
happens when you don't take care of your needs and you keep pushing them down. And I ended up in really bad postpartum anxiety. And it was a whole thing. And it took a long time to recover. And we had to ask for way more help. And I've watched other people go through similar things where they're just like, oh, just keep putting it off, putting it off. I'll be okay, push through. And you can end up in hospital. Like it does catch up with you eventually. So my belief is I can't afford not to. Like no one else can be mum to my kids.
Mhm.
So when I've had really difficult pregnancies, I challenge myself to ask, how much help do I think I need? And then it's probably 10 times that much. So
Mhm.
what's a really generous amount of help that I could ask for? How could I just be really vulnerable and really uncomfortable? Because someone else can come and hang out my washing. If I've got pelvic instability and I need to be resting, someone else can come and hang out my washing, but no one else can be mum to my kids. So I have to protect my energy and my well-being to be able to keep doing that. So that was very uncomfortable having people come into my house while I sat on the couch and they were like cleaning my kitchen and sweeping my floor and I'm just watching them do that. But I was like, I'm willing to do this. It will be more uncomfortable if I end up in a really bad way and I can't be there for my family at all.
And Monica, that was
Another
with
way
your
that I think
oh,
about
sorry. I interrupted you. I was gonna say that was with your last pregnancy,
that's right.
wasn't it?
Yes, and the one before that was also quite challenging. So I had learned a few things along the way. So the last one in particular, yeah, was the most challenging I've had.
Yeah. I just remember you navigating through that. I think we had talked at some point as you were working through that, and
Mm.
I think that's such an incredible visual for us to just sit here as moms and be like, "Oh, can you imagine someone else coming in and, it's like when your if anyone else has ever had this, like your in-laws come over and they wanna clean for you, and you're like, "Don't." It's so uncomfortable. At least for me, I'm like, "Oh," and I have had to learn to get over that and be like, "Yep, I'm gonna take all the help I can get. You wanna do laundry? By all means. You can fold laundry while you're babysitting if you really want to."
Yep.
But we have to get over ourselves
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, it's been very good for my ego. And there was just something just in particular, like just because I was sitting there watching them do it. It feels a bit different if you're like, well, I'm up and about and I'm doing other things and they're chipping in. But it's like, yeah, I'm just sitting here watching you multiple times a week.
Oh.
That was very uncomfortable. And then I had two other things I wanted to say about rest. One of my favorite definitions of rest that I've heard is it's not resisting the moment you're in. And if you think about, like, maybe if you've tried to sit down and read or do something that you enjoy that's restful, and then the whole time your brain is screaming at you, you should be doing stuff. I feel guilty and I shouldn't be doing this. Like, that is, you do not get up feeling rested because you're resisting the moment that you're in the whole time. And then equally, you can be doing something that is active that maybe you wouldn't typically call restful. But if you're not resisting, like playing with my kids is not one of my favorite things, doing the imaginative play and all that kind of thing. But if I'm not resisting the moment and I'm surrendering to it, it's a lot less draining. Or it could be just doing housework and not resisting that I'm doing it and instead telling myself I'm doing good and holy work and this is important, it's a very different experience. So a lot of the times we may not even need as much rest as what we're imagining. Like what we really need is rest from all of the resistance that we're having throughout the day. And on a similar note, I tend to find it easier to be energized by my coaching business than a lot of the home stuff. That is an ongoing struggle for me. It feels like not my wheelhouse, whereas coaching definitely feels like my wheelhouse. But my business coach said she just decided not everything in my life can take from me. Like she has quite a big business, but it's like I just can't be in a scenario where everything is taking from me and it's tiring me because that's just not going to be sustainable. So she just decided my family life is just going to give to me. It's just going to be so life giving. It's going to be the thing that refreshes and refuels me. I was like, wait, you can just decide to see it that way? Like, what? And so that has been really interesting to play around with. Like, who am I as a mother when serving my family, playing with my kids, when doing all of the things that I don't necessarily typically enjoy? Like, if I was seeing it all as a gift and something that has the potential to fuel me instead of take from me and drain me, it's just a very different conversation in your brain.
I love the decision because it goes back to free will. We have the choice of how we want to view each situation, the lens that we want to see it through. Do we want to see it through our own or do we want to see it through the eyes of God? Like, what does He desire to give to me here? What does He long for me to receive? And how am I blocking the receptivity of that love from my children or whatever it is through my own perception or my own biases? I kind of want to go back and highlight some of the things that you said. So, first off, you said, I can't afford not to rest. I am a perfect example of waiting until something is an emergency before I
Mm.
address it. I actually just shared this on social media this week. So, I had a tendon that was separated from the bone of my finger, and it happened on a Tuesday. And I mean, it hurt, but I didn't really think anything of it. And the next morning I was cooking and I noticed I was like, oh my gosh, I can't straighten my finger. The entire tip of my finger was like floppy. It wasn't floppy, but it was like at a 90-degree angle, which my joints do not even, I can't even force them to do that on my other fingers. And no matter what I did, I couldn't straighten my finger. And I was like, well, okay, that's not normal, but I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, maybe it'll get better throughout the day. And 2 days later, my daughter kept telling me, she's like, "Mom, your finger is freaking me out." So not only did I have that going on, the lower knuckle was then starting to hyperextend backward. So my finger was looking all kinds of
Mm.
crazy. And my husband finally saw it and he's like, "Why have you not gone to the doctor? Like, what is wrong with you?" But I have an aversion to going to the doctor. I've just had so many experiences. One, I think sometimes I'm like, "Oh, it's such a waste of time. They're just going to tell me to do this and it's not going to help. I don't want to pay for it. I don't want to take the time out of my day and rearrange my whole schedule." But also, I had to think of, okay, what is the long term effect? If I don't get this fixed, they might not be able to fix it. And that was one of the first things they said.
Mm.
We're like, we're so glad you came in because some people wait way too long. And then you have this longer term damage. So now I'm looking at 9 weeks versus what maybe could not have been healed. And in my mind, it was like, well, it's an inconvenience, but I could still function throughout my day. It wasn't an emergency. And I just think that reminder of I can't afford to not take care of this because long term, it's going to have a bigger impact and it's going to set me on a deficit that is so much bigger than this small inconvenience right now or this small discomfort. So I love that
Mm.
reminder. Like, I can't afford to not rest. I can't afford to not move my body every day. I can't afford to not pray
Yeah.
today. Those reminders are
I
so
think it's
helpful.
interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said it's not an emergency. Like that is the filter that a lot of us are living in. I don't know who it is, but somebody has coined an expression, the tyranny of the urgent. Like that's where a lot of people are living. If it's not an emergency, I don't deal with it. It's only the thing that feels the most urgent that's screaming in my face. And we have to get better at stepping out of that and just looking more at the long term, stepping out of what feels urgent in this moment right now where am I going? Where am I heading? Who do I want to become? What's God calling me to co-create with him? Because as long as we stay in a cycle of just putting out the fires, it keeps us stuck there. So you have to see it as, no, this is an investment. I'm investing in making this decision. Like going to the doctor, if they just say something that I don't really like that's still an investment of time. It's not a waste of time. Yeah, the more that I think of investing my time and investing making decisions, it leads to a lot more fruitful stewardship as opposed to, well, I'll just bury it in the ground over here and avoid and not be a good steward of it.
Yeah, avoid and ignore, and if it doesn't catch on fire, then it's fine. I'm just gonna leave it there. I think we can become addicted to a stress state. And then when we come out of it and we're in a more peaceful state, it feels like something's wrong. And so we're like, "Oh, well,
Mm,
there must be something else. I need to add more stuff to my to-do list because I don't know what it's like to be in a state of comfort and to be in a state of peace." And so we can kind of fall back into that trap. And so I like this idea of embracing rest, like embracing that this is something that I need. God created me to need rest. And like you said, that can look like different things. Rest doesn't necessarily mean sleeping. It might be going to have coffee with a friend away from your kids, like where you're not being touched, you know? It can look different. It can be sitting down and coloring and listening to music for a few minutes instead of listening to an episode of something or a TED Talk where you feel like you just want to learn more information. And again, it goes back to that digital age of feeling like we need to constantly fill our brains with more noise or to catch up with all the things. I don't know if this happens to you. People send me stuff all the time, like watch this, which I love. It's great, but I can't watch them all. I can't because my brain cannot be running 8 million miles an hour all the time. So I put them in a list. And if the Lord brings it back to me to go back and revisit that, great. And if not, I'm so glad that it was helpful for them. And so for anyone listening who sent me something, please keep sending them. I don't mean don't send them. But it's also okay to protect that mental space, and it's okay to protect that
mhm,
quiet time in your life too, or otherwise, when you do go to rest, you won't be restful.
mhm.
How do you decide when you're looking at that to-do list, what really matters, or how do you prioritize when it feels like everything is important?
Well, firstly, I don't choose to have the thought that everything's important, um, because it's just impossible. The real question is, what's God calling me to? Like, that's the filter for what is
Mm,
important. And also, everything feeling important is kind of an all or nothing thought, which is a tactic our brain loves to use because, as we mentioned earlier, like our fallen human brain, it loves to avoid effort, it likes to avoid being uncomfortable. And so, when it uses all or nothing thinking, the all is impossible. It's impossible to reach perfection this side of heaven. And so, if the only options are all or nothing, one of them is impossible. So, the only thing you get is nothing, which is to do nothing, get nothing. And our brain loves that. It's like, awesome. I get to do nothing. I get to not put out effort. Because when everything feels important, it's immediately, well, I can't choose. I can't get anything done. It's overwhelming. And so let me avoid. So we have to just step out of that and ask, like, how do I know what's important? And yeah, the filter that matters is, what is God asking of me? And it's just impossible that he's making like an inhumane quest of you.
mhm,
Um, and it's the same when we tell ourselves, like, I don't have enough time. It's just not possible. Like, God always gives us the exact amount of time for the exact things that he's calling us to do in a way that is in our best interests,
mhm,
life giving. So if we're feeling like I don't have enough time, there's something going on there to look at. And I think also he gives us freedom to choose and desire. Like, there are so many good things for us to choose from, to do and to create and to experience. And so he's not necessarily like, this is the one perfect, precise thing that you must do today or this week. He's like, there's your vocation, there's some specific things that I do want you to do. And also, here's like a whole like buffet of incredible things that are all good. And he gives us the freedom to choose within that. And he gives us desire, which is a good thing. And it's supposed to lead us to him. So the way that I tend to operate less from to-do lists and more every week setting aside time to learn from the previous week, first of all, and then to say, what will make this week successful? What will make this week
Mm.
fruitful, productive? What are the most essential things? And then that becomes like the North Star to help me make decisions throughout my day. It becomes like a filter for, well, if what I'm putting on my to-do list, does it match what I feel like God's calling me to create this week? But it's also just being open to there being an ongoing moment by moment conversation with him, which you have much more headspace and openness to hear his voice throughout the day when your mind is calmer.
Yeah. The question, what will make this week successful, I think is so valuable if we reflect on that going into our week and even playing with the word successful. Like, what does successful mean to us? So you could switch that out and say, what will make this week fruitful? Or some of us might look at it and say, what will make this week productive? But it's finding that word choice that really resonates with what truly is most important. Like, what will aid me this week in fulfilling my heart's deepest desires or those desires for greatness that you mentioned earlier. And I think of the planners and it's like the top three, like those should be our top three, not all of the other stuff. Those are the things that we need to like orient our days around. I love Father Boniface Hicks had a talk where he was discussing decision making because sometimes we can get so wrapped up in even the really basic decisions. It's like, well, I don't know what God wants me to do. And we can almost like try to over discern, but he gives us
Mm,
the free will. I like this idea of the buffet. And Father Boniface Hicks talks about when it comes to those big like vocation choices, like, should I live consecrated life or should I be married? He's like, it's less about the decision and more about the heart. Like, are you seeking holiness? If you are seeking holiness, then whatever you choose, seek holiness in that. And that is what is truly important.
mm,
It's not, am I a teacher or am I a nurse? Or does the Lord want me to do X or Y? It's what is the heart behind that? And I think that, again, if we go back to what will set us up for success this week, what will help us to co create this week, or even be mindful of the co creation that the Lord is in it with us, that is where we are really going to see good things come, that greatness start to open up. I always love talking to you. We called you the questions queen in the last episode, and I think it just opens our mind to possibility. So I love talking to you because
mm.
these questions just inspire me to go back to my own kind of weekly routine and make adjustments.
Client was just saying, oh my goodness, she's only just started, but every time I talk to you, I realize I've just been looking at this one little spot over here, and then you just open it up to this whole other world of possibility. And it breaks my brain in the best way. I'm like, awesome.
Yes. Well, let's see if you can break our brain one more time because I want to talk about the consistency struggle. So it's like, okay, I've looked at my definition of productivity and my to-do list, but I know that there needs to be a consistency aspect in whatever it is that I'm doing. I prayed about this morning. Like consistency in my prayer time is such a struggle right now because my kids are getting older. And as they get older, their activities are later at night. So last night we got home at 9 p.m. By the time we cooked dinner and got the kids to bed, it was 10 p.m. And then it's like, okay, I still need to shower and I would like to spend some time with my husband. And then any of the other things that I wasn't able to get to that day, like I knew I was going to have my nephews coming over in the morning and there was laundry on the couch. Like I really just had to kind of pause and think about, okay, how am I going to fit in my prayer in the morning, right? I can't just keep cutting sleep. So I kind of took that question to the Lord today, and it's something I'm going to continue to discuss with God is like, how can I continue consistency in my prayer? Or for some people, it's consistency in exercise or whatever it happens to be. Consistency can be so hard when we have these variables called children who affect our day to day life. So I just love to hear your perspective on why consistency can feel so hard and how to navigate showing up consistently when there are constant interruptions.
Mm. So, I mean, firstly, I did an entire masterclass on consistency, the 10 most common mistakes that I see people making with consistency. So you should all definitely go listen to that. But I think one reason that it's hard is we just throw around the word consistency, and I want to be consistent without really defining what it means for each specific thing. Like being consistent with prayer means something different than being consistent with exercise, maybe, because you don't necessarily want to do that every day. But prayer is something that you do want to do every day. And maybe not only once a day, you maybe want to do it multiple times a day, like at least checking in with our Lord. So, like, I think it becomes hard when we use this one word, but then we leave it like
Mm.
undefined when it just means doing something regularly. You could do something once a month consistently, or once a week consistently, or every day consistently. Like they're all different. And if it's vague and there's room for negotiation, then our brain will for sure negotiate because negotiation means putting off making a decision, putting in effort, putting off a failure opportunity. So I think that's one thing that makes it hard. But I'll also say that your most consistent actions come from your most consistent thoughts. And I think a lot of people, they focus on the action part without solving for what's happening in my mindset that's driving the action or the inaction. One other big mistake that I see people making a lot is telling themselves they're not consistent, they're an inconsistent person. But that's not true because here's the thing, like, let's say prayer. Let's say you are like, I'm trying to pray, but maybe I'm doing it 2 days out of the week and 5 days I'm not praying. So I'm not consistent with prayer. You're actually consistent with not praying.
Mm.
So you are consistent. Whether you're doing or you're not doing the thing, you're either consistent with doing the thing or you're consistent with not doing the thing. So it's impossible that anybody is inconsistent. You're consistently doing something. It's just the habits that you have. That's what a habit is, repeatedly doing a thing. So, what that means is that you are capable of consistency. You just haven't developed the skill. You haven't translated the skill to the specific thing that you want to do yet.
There you go. Monica just broke our brains that we are all consistent at something. It might not be the thing that we want to be consistent at, but we are not inconsistent as humans. I think that's the thing that stuck out to me the most out of what you said. But first off, you talked about definitions and being clear. Anyone who has ever gotten coached, this is something that's going to come up is what does that word mean to you? If we are not defining it, then it is this ambiguous thought that's going to keep floating around and it's going to lead to a trail of a million different other spiderweb thoughts.
Yeah.
And we're going to sit here and we're going to ruminate and we're not going to actually fix any problems and we're not going to move forward. We need to be clear and ask ourselves, what do we mean by consistency? And like you said, even getting more narrow, consistency in prayer, consistency in exercise, consistency in the way that I talk to my children, consistency in routines. And then focus on the thoughts we have about that activity more so than the action. Because so much is rooted in our thoughts. Our repeated thoughts become our beliefs, which then gives us a false identity that is not rooted in Christ. And like you said, it is more than, I say this all the time, but it's not thought swapping. We have to look at what stems from that thought. Like what is happening from our action or inaction? What are the effects of that? And so that we can truly start to understand, are these thoughts from the Lord or are they not from the Lord? Which ones am I going to give the most airtime? Because the one that's getting the most airtime is the one that is going to fuel your actions or your lack of actions. So
Yeah,
good.
100%.
If you send me, Monica, the link to your 10 common mistakes, I will put that in the show notes with this episode.
Sounds good. It's really good. I talk about the 10 most common mistakes, what they are, how you know you're doing it, why it's a problem, and what the fix is. It's really good.
So, with that, where can people find you You're on some social media.
Pretty much just Instagram. So that's at Monica Elias Coaching. It does link to a Facebook page, but I'm not super active on there. And yeah, if you sign up for the masterclass, you'll get on my email list and then you'll stay up to date with anything that I'm doing. Those would be the best places.
Be sure to go check out Monica. And I will tell you, I have had shared clients with Monica. Sometimes people love coaching so much and they'll coach with one person and then they'll go experience coaching with someone else just because we all have slightly different takes on it or a different area of emphasis. And then they might come back to you or they, kind of vice versa. And I have also been coached by Monica. She's been coached by me. There's just so much fruit that comes from it. Monica is amazing. So if you are looking into coaching and you want to explore that opportunity, don't be afraid to try out different coaches. We don't all have the same coaching style, even if we've been coached through the same program. And a different person or just a different perspective at that point in your life might be exactly what you need. So, encourage all of you to go check out Monica, or at the very least, follow along, check out some of her master classes because they're excellent. And with that, Monica, my closing question is always, do you have a favorite prayer tip or scripture verse to leave us with today?
Hmm. I think my prayer tip would be it's maybe less of a tip and a bit more involved, but anyway, I have a concept that I call the discernment triad. And so if you are struggling, like anytime that I feel like I'm disconnected from God and my prayer is not as intimate as I would like, this is my go to. So the discernment triad is this idea that your experience of prayer on the human level, like to be clear, we can't control the graces God gives us, whether we receive consolations, like we can't control that. God is really the one who builds the entire edifice of prayer, but we can control what we're thinking, how we're showing up to it. And I kind of think of it as there's three buckets. So, what you're thinking about God, what you're thinking about yourself, and what you're thinking about your desires. And I think of desire as the conversation starter with God. So, if you had a friend or a relationship or you were in a marriage where you try to organize to go to eat somewhere with them or to do something with them or you're trying to have conversations and you're like, so what would you like to do? Or what are you interested in? What are your desires? And they were just like, oh, I don't know, whatever you want. And they just never offered anything. It would feel a little bit one-sided. Your conversations maybe wouldn't be very interesting. You'd be like, come on, just give me something here. Like there's just no meat to it. And I think that's kind of the same with God. Like he wants to know, what are my real, honest desires? Without judgment, without hiding anything, like what are the things really truly on my heart? The more that we can see our desires as good and as conversation starters, now we're having real conversations. Now we're having a real heart to heart. Now we're really being vulnerable. And it also ties in with like, how am I seeing myself? Am I seeing myself as his beloved daughter, or are there other things getting in the way? And am I seeing him as a loving father? So that's like a really brief overview, but just like checking in with how connected am I with each of those things? Where's my thinking at with each of those? That is always really helpful to then kind of go, okay, I've got some thinking to shift. And then that always leads me to show up differently to my prayer and to till the soil and to change my disposition to be more open to receive what he wants to give me.
And just to reiterate, it was my thoughts about God, my thoughts about myself, and my thoughts about my desires, correct? Yeah. I love just even picking one of those as a conversation starter can be so helpful. Sometimes when we go to prayer, our mind is so busy and it's like we either want to talk about everything or it's like, I don't know what to talk about. And so giving our thoughts direction can be so helpful. It's just like if we are going to have a conversation with someone else, we wouldn't bring all of the things up at one moment, right? We'd start to talk about one thing if we truly wanted to hear their feedback and have a true conversation and not just a verbal dumping of everything that is on our mind. And so I really like that idea of having a conversation with Lord and just reflecting on what are our thoughts, especially our thoughts about ourselves. I don't think we spend enough time doing that, is looking at the way that we are
Mm,
perceiving ourselves, the way that we're talking to ourselves, and just kind of saying
And
like,
it's,
"Oh, are these in alignment with what God thinks about me?"
yeah. And it's less about like, just to clarify, it's not like a brain dump. into prayer. It's like I prepare myself. Let's look at what's going on, like an
Mhm.
exercise that I kind of do. And then it's like, okay, now that I've prepared the soil and I've gotten a bit more clarity and I'm more open, then we go to prayer. It just changes how you show up to it and who you're being in the experience of mental prayer specifically. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I found that with
Mm.
coaching too, is there are things that come up and it gives us clarity. So then we know what to take to prayer more specifically because we're kind of getting to the root of it. So it's kind of like a very short, simplified version of that. And also just highlighting a tip is prepare for prayer. Not that we always have to do
Mm.
this, but if we go to prayer and we just sit down and expect something to happen right away and we were just watching the news, our mind is going to be on the
Mm.
news or whatever it is that we were just doing. That's just the nature of the way that our brains work. So having something to help us prepare for that conversation, just like the way that we prepare for mass, if what we are listening to in the car on the way to mass or what we did on Sunday morning before we go to mass is going to impact the way that we participate in the mass because that's what's going to come up in our brain as we're going through mass. Whereas if we get there a little bit early and we have that little bit of quiet time before and we ask the Lord to help prepare our hearts and our minds for mass, we're going to have a different experience than if we don't.
Mhm.
Monica, you have been so great.
Absolutely.
It's been such a blessing to have you here. I'm just so grateful to know you and for all the work that you are doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kylie. It's been a delightful way to start my day.
Yes, it's the start of your day and it's getting close to the end of mine. Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie M. Hine. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.